Okay, so we're going to go. Okay, so we're going to go back to talking about that profit maximizing that we were looking at before. And so, actually, 1 minute before we start. 1 minute. So we're going to continue looking at that profit maximizing behavior of our firm in the competitive market. And so what we left off with the last class is talking about doing profit maximization, looking for where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And we saw, just based on how we would write the profit function being revenue minus cost, that when we find that derivative, that we're actually looking for where we're trying to find the quantity where the derivative of the profit function is equal to 0, and that translates into finding the quantity where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And I'm going to talk to this. So, So as I was saying, that we found that if you find the derivative of the profit function at a particular Q0 or at a particular Q star, then this is your quantity that would maximize your profit. And then we also concluded that this is the same as your Q star, where your marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Okay. So here's a little bit of an aside on that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. I'm going to call this a little bit of a aside on this. Is that if your marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, the firm will increase its quantity to Q star. And if my marginal revenue is less than my marginal cost, then you want to decrease Q to Q star. So, just to keep on that idea. So if at the quantity you're producing, you realize that the additional revenue that you're getting from the last quantity that you produced and sold is greater than the additional cost to produce it, then you want to go ahead and produce another unit, because you're not getting to that point of equality to your revenue is greater than your cost, and your additional revenue is greater than your additional cost, and so you want to go ahead and increase your quantity. And if you get to the point where your marginal revenue is less than your marginal cost, you woke up and this is what is happening, then in that kind of situation, you want to decrease your quantity to a point where that quantity is giving you marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So here's another aside that you guys probably remember from long ago with your microeconomics class, that you also want to produce Q star if the price is greater than or equal to average variable cost. Now, where we're getting this from. So let's just continue with our aside here, and maybe let's just try to write this in a different color just to make a point. Okay, so here, at Q star, so recall that we have our profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. And if you remember, in the short run, your total cost is equal to variable cost plus fixed cost. So in the short run, total cost is equal to variable cost plus your fixed cost. So this implies that your profit is equal to total revenue minus variable cost plus fixed cost. Right? So your profit is equal to total revenue minus variable cost minus your fixed cost. But in the short run, fixed cost is fixed. In other words, whether you produce a level of output such as Q star or whether you produce 0, you will still be faced with fixed costs. So fixed costs would be like the lease on your building or the interest rate that you have to pay on the loan that you took out to purchase the machinery and equipment. So either way, whether I'm producing or I'm not producing, I would still be faced with fixed costs. So as a result, in the short run, fixed cost does not factor into my profit maximizing decision. Okay. So, however, whether Q is equal to 0 or Q is equal to Q star, the firm faces fixed cost S in the short run. So only, or I want to say so. So as a result, how do you spell it? As a result, only variable cost and total revenue matters in the profit maximizing decision. Matters in the profit maximizing decision in the short run. So here then, you're basically caring about your partial profit, if you will. So yeah, let me just call it partial profit. You care about your partial profit, and you care about the relationship between partial profit. You care about that relationship with your partial profit. And this partial profit is total revenue minus variable cost. The firm seeks to maximize your partial profit. So you find the Q. Well, you could do it that way, or you could say, you know what, on average, if you're on average, you could say total revenue over quantity minus your variable cost over quantity is equal to average revenue minus average variable cost. So my point here is that the firm cares. If I Q 0, if I'm producing nothing, then my total revenue is equal to 0. I have nothing to sell, and my total variable cost is also equal to 0. I'm not purchasing inputs to produce something if my quantity is 0. So my total revenue is 0, and my total variable cost is equal to 0. So in other words, at Q equals 0, if you will, you could say that, then my average revenue minus my average variable cost is equal to 0. But my average revenue is my price, so price minus average variable cost is equal to 0. So what do I mean by this? Then as long as my price is greater than, so you could say price is equal to average variable cost at Q equals 0, which maximizes your profit. So what am I trying to say in a nutshell? That if my price is greater than average variable cost, you want to produce Q equals Q star. If my price is less than average variable cost, then I want to produce Q equals 0. And if my price is equal to average variable cost, then you are indifferent. You are indifferent. You can produce Q equals 0 or Q equals Q star. So basically, so here I'm saying, you know, we're talking about producing a quantity Q0 or Q equals Q star. We know that the full profit function is equal to total revenue minus variable cost minus fixed cost. So then the question is, if I can't change fixed costs, then what do I really care about? So I really care about that relationship between total revenue and total variable cost. So it's as if I'm saying my profit plus the fixed cost is equal to total revenue minus variable cost, right? So you know, like, so my point is I can't change that fixed cost, so I only care about this partial section of my profit, which is total revenue minus variable cost. So I'm looking at that total revenue minus variable cost, and so since this is my focus now, the question is, well, when am I going to produce Q equals 0 or Q equal to whatever Q star? Well, I noticed that one. If my Q is equal to 0, then my total revenue is equal to 0. My total revenue is equal to 0. My variable cost is equal to 0. But basically what I'm saying is that total revenue minus variable cost is equal to 0. So maybe I want to put that there. That this is equal to 0. Your total revenue minus variable cost is equal to 0 when your Q is equal to 0. Because you can't change that, right? So now if you want to look at that relationship, so maybe, you know, let's not really say maximize or partial profit, but if you want to look at this situation of total revenue minus variable cost equal to 0, well, let's look at it in terms of averages. And so we realize that at Q equals 0, I'm saying average revenue minus average variable cost is equal to 0. If my average revenue minus average variable cost is equal to 0, then we remember that price is equal to average revenue. So it's the same as saying price minus average variable cost is equal to 0. And so we get down to P equal average variable cost. So if we stare at this for a second, and this is the meat of the matter, this is what you want to remember, if you will. If you stare at this for a second, basically what we're saying here is fixed cost is a given expenditure in the short run, right? So let's assume, back again, I'm running my food truck, and just assume it's a perfectly competitive market. I'm running my food truck. I borrowed money from the bank to purchase the food truck and also to purchase the oven, the stove, whatever equipment I have in there. And so I have an interest payment. So if for this week, I do not go out there and sell anything, I still owe the bank money, right? So I still have to make that interest payment or that rental payment on my truck and on the machinery and equipment that I borrowed money to purchase. So my fixed cost exists regardless of whether I produce or don't produce. Okay, that being said, then what do I care about? Well, is the revenue that I'm receiving covering the value of the goods and services that the inputs, I shouldn't say goods and services, that are covering the inputs that I'm using to produce the output I'm selling? Say it again. Is the revenue that I'm receiving from the output I'm selling covering the cost I incurred when I purchased the inputs that I use to produce the goods and services, the inputs to produce the output? And I'm saying here that if the revenue I'm receiving is greater than the cost to produce it, then I'm going to go ahead and produce that particular quantity. But if the revenue I'm receiving is less than that variable cost to produce it, then I'm going to go ahead and produce Q equals 0. Right? And so here I'm looking at even further deeply in my decision that is not that I'm just looking for where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, but because in the short run I am faced with a fixed cost that I have to take care of regardless of whether I produce or not, right? It is unaffected from my output decision. Then I have a second step in my decision, and the second step is to determine whether my total revenue is covering my variable cost. Otherwise, just fire my workers and move along. So when we look at the firm's decision in the short run, the firm's short run decision in a nutshell. First step is that you're going to find Q star where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Then your second step is to compare your Q star with Q0. So if the price of the good is greater than or equal to the average variable cost at Q star, the firm will produce Q star. And in this case, your profit is going to be equal to total revenue minus total cost. But if your profit is less than your average variable cost at Q star, the firm should produce 0. We call this shutting down. I'll talk about that in a minute. And they should produce 0 to maximize profit. Notice that in this situation, if you're producing 0 to maximize your profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. It's going to end up being equal to minus fixed cost. Because when you're producing 0, total revenue is 0, right? You have nothing selling, so you get no revenue. And your variable cost is equal to 0 because you're not hiring anyone, so your variable, you're not hiring labor, so your variable cost is equal to 0, and the only thing you have left is your fixed cost. So, a quick way that you could always check on this is whenever you calculate your profit, you want to check, is that profit greater than negative fixed cost? If the profit is greater than negative fixed cost, then yes, go ahead and produce that quantity. But if the profit is less than negative fixed cost, then you want to not produce that quantity. Now, if you notice here very easily, I added on the equal to the ABC. The idea behind this is that if you're indifferent and you're already producing that quantity, you're just going to go ahead and produce that quantity, right? But you're still indifferent it. If you're on the outside looking in, meaning you were not producing, then you would go ahead and produce your zero. The second thing that I wanted to say right here is that we call this shutting down. Shutting down is different from exiting a market. Here's why. When you shut down, your presence still exists in the market. In other words, when I decide I am not going to sell any meals this week from my food truck, I am still in the market of selling food truck meals. I'm still operating, or I'm still present in the market, I should say. I'm still present in the market. I still have fixed costs. For me to not be in the market at all, to exit the market, then I have nothing with me that is part of this market. In other words, I would have gotten rid of the food truck and gotten rid of everything that is tied in the market. But the fact that I still have the food truck, that means I still have the ability to produce a positive amount, and so I am still in the market. So we call this shutting down rather than just saying that we exit the market. Okay. So let us look at a question to see if to make sure that we understand what's going on. So here's my question. Consider that you have this market, right? So the market price, which you have no control over, let's not forget it. The market price is equal to $120. And the firm, okay, a firm's cost function and now here, I'm going to use a small q because, or the lowercase q. I'm using the lowercase q because we have to start wrapping in our minds this idea that there are so many firms in the market that whatever quantity I find here, the quantity that I find here, we want to keep in mind that this quantity is the quantity that firm is producing, and that there's a much greater quantity that represents the market quantity, which is going to be our uppercase q. So for now, we're going to keep it at our lowercase q and get ourselves used to it. And with this lowercase q, I'm going to say 120 plus 40q plus 10q squared. And we know where our increasing cost function, right? So now we understand from chapter 7 where we're getting this cost function from, and we know that it's an increasing cost function because as you increase your level of output, right, you're going to increase. If you continue to do that optimization, like minimizing your cost and choosing the level of inputs that minimize your cost of producing a particular level of output, we realize that we're choosing these LNQs on an upward sloping expansion path. And so we now know from chapter 7 that our cost function is going to end up being increasing, and we now know and appreciate where this cost function is coming from, that we didn't just throw some Q's together. Okay, very good. So here are the questions. So I want you to find Q star. Then I want you to find the profit. At Q star, and then I want you to tell me the firm's decision. So what should be the firm's decision about Q star? So of course, I know some of you have already worked it out. So you can do this one out of two ways. You can write up the profit function and work with it from the profit function. So let's do that. So your profit function is equal to total revenue minus total cost. So my profit is equal to total revenue is price times quantity, and the price is 120 times my quantity. And my total cost is 120 plus 40q plus 10q squared. So my profit function, nice and easy, is equal to 120q minus 120 minus 40q minus 10q squared. I find the derivative of my profit function, I'm finding q star. So I find the derivative of my profit function with respect to quantity. I'm going to set that equal to 0. So my Q star has to be equal to 4. So I find Q star equal to 4. Now, on the aside, for those of us, well, not for those of us, for everybody, you should realize that your marginal revenue is equal to the price for the competitive firm, which is equal to 120. And your marginal cost is equal to the derivative of your cost function with respect to quantity, and that is equal to 120 minus 40Q. No, 120 minus 40 minus 20Q. So if you say 120 is equal to, no, if you say marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, you can say 120 is equal to 120 minus 40 minus 20Q. Then you can say 40 is equal to 20Q. So my Q is equal to so no one is telling me, are you guys there? Am I all alone? Okay, somebody's finally telling me the error of what I did. No, you're not telling me the error, you're telling me the answer is 2. So notice the cost function is 120 plus 40Q plus 10Q squared. So marginal cost is actually 40 plus 20Q. Let me see if someone is now telling me. Look, so our cost function is 120 plus 40Q plus 10Q squared. So our marginal cost is actually 40 plus 20Q. Our marginal cost is equal to 40 plus 20Q. So if I'm setting up marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, then I have to set up 120 is equal to 40 plus 20Q. So 80 is equal to 20Q, and Q is equal to 4. So this is our way of doing it using marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So if you look back on our question, market price is 120. So our marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost for the marginal revenue is equal to the price for our competitive firm. So the marginal revenue is equal to 120. This is our cost function. So if we find the derivative of our cost function with respect to quantity, the 120 will drop. So it's going to be 40 plus 2 times 10, which is 20Q. So our marginal cost is 40 plus 20Q. And we're setting 40 plus 20Q equal to 120. So 40 plus 20Q is equal to 120 for marginal revenue equal marginal cost. And we solve and get Q star equal to 4. The second question says, find our profit at Q star. So our profit at 4 is going to be equal to 120 minus, so here's our profit function from long ago, 120 times Q minus 120 minus 40 times Q minus 10Q squared. So our profit function would be so if we're doing our profit function, 140Q, well, I should say 140 times 4 minus 120 minus 40 times 4 minus 10 times 4 squared. So my profit at 4 is equal to, I use my trusty calculator, 120 times 4, memory plus, 120, memory minus, 40 times 4, memory minus, 4 times 4 times 10. No one's giving me the answer yet? Oh, I got an answer, memory minus. I'm not getting negative. I mean, I don't know. Is everyone else getting negative? So let's work it out. So I am getting, let me see, one more answer if somebody got what I got. And my trusty calculator adding machine, I got 40. I got 40 with my trusting adding machine with the memory plus and memory minus. So 4 times 120 is 480. 480 minus 120 minus 160 minus 160. Okay, so a couple of people are getting the 40. So then I get my profit is equal to 40. So in this situation, it turns out that yes, the firm should produce, right? So the second part of the question, you would say, yes, your profit of at 4 or profit at Q star equals 4 is positive, so the firm should definitely produce. So the firm should produce. Also, your average variable cost at Q star equals 4 is going to be equal to, if you think about your variable cost part of the function, which is 40Q plus 10Q squared, average variable cost is going to be equal to 40 times 4 plus 10 times 4 squared. But remember, it's average variable cost, so you have to divide that by 4, and you should get 80. So average variable cost at Q equals 4 is equal to 80, and your price is greater than your average variable cost, at Q equals 4. So yes, in this situation, the firm should go ahead and produce at Q equals 4 because you're getting this kind of situation. Okay, let me give another price. Let me think of another price or another situation. Let's say our price is, let's make a price $200. I think $200 should do the trick. And then I have a point to make. So if the market price is equal to $200, should the firm produce? Oh wait, not $200. I'm so sorry. Let's make that market price equal to $60. So why or why not? So to do this, we're going to do it the other way with marginal revenue and marginal cost. So at P equal to $60, or marginal revenue is equal to $60, right? Also, our marginal cost, which is equal to the derivative of your cost function with respect to quantity, we remember that our marginal cost is equal to 40 minus, or 40 plus 20Q. So finding Q star, or at Q star, your marginal revenue is equal to your marginal cost. So 60 is equal to 40 minus, or 40 plus 20Q. Oof, why am I getting Q equals 0? Okay, sorry for the little change. Let's make let's make the market price $70. I don't want Q, and I'm changing it because I don't want, or let's make it $80. Okay, thank you. I will go with the suggestion that is being made. Let's make it $80. Because, and I'm changing it just for when you're reviewing on the, when you're listening, I'm changing it because I don't want Q equal to 0. I want us to get a positive quantity. And I'm going to take the suggestion from your classmate. Thank you. And I'm going to make it equal to 80. So at 80, then we get 40 is equal to 20Q. So our Q star is equal to 2. Okay, great. So now we have to check at our Q star equal to 2. My average variable cost is equal to my variable cost divided by quantity, which is equal to 40 times 2 plus 10 times 2 squared. So my average variable cost at 2 is equal to, let's see, 4 times, oh, I got an answer. It's equal to 60, thank you. So my average variable cost is equal to 60, and my price is still greater than average variable cost. So you'll understand what's going on. Here's a graph. Here's what is really happening. Let's put this at the bottom so I have more space. And actually, what we can do here, we can calculate the profit. If we calculate the profit at 2, we're going to get what? 160 minus 120 minus 80 minus 40. So a profit at 2, I have an answer, is equal to, I have lots of answers, thank you so much, is equal to minus 80. So here we're getting a profit that is negative. So we're getting a profit that is negative, even though the firm is producing a positive quantity. And you'd want to say, well, why would the firm produce and get a negative profit, even though, and yeah, why would he produce and be happy with a negative profit? So I have 2 points and then I have a graph. Because this negative profit is better than not producing anything and getting a loss of, exactly, they're able to cover some fixed costs by not producing and getting a loss of 120. However, so since your profit at 2 is greater than the profit at 0. And this is the same as saying minus 80 is better than minus 120. So since the firm is able to, still make a loss that is better than a loss of fixed cost, he'll go ahead and produce it. Okay? So what is happening? Let's look on the graph. So here's the second point that I want to say. Remember that we were talking about negative fixed costs. We were talking about negative profit, and if negative profit is a bad thing, and so forth. Well, what you want to realize in this situation, like I said, that the firm, even though it is getting this negative economic profit, it is possible that at that point when it's getting that negative economic profit, its accounting profit is positive. Because remember, economic profit is including your implicit cost as well as your explicit cost. It's all your opportunity cost. So when your economic profit is negative, your accounting profit may very well be positive, or your business profit may very well be positive. So on the outlook, from a firm standpoint, like if you're just thinking about the firm by itself and separate from everything else in that kind of way, the firm itself is doing good. But then when you start to think about, is this something I want to maintain? Then you're going to start saying no, because now you're going to realize your implicit costs, the opportunity costs involved with all the other things that you've given up, right? Your foregone labor wages, like salaries that you forego, your foregone interest, your foregone rent, everything else that you have implicitly given up to operate this. Now you're going to start looking at it, and it's now going to start making a play, so that in the long run, if you are maintaining this negative profit, you're going to start thinking about the long run and start thinking about whether you're going to stay in this or not. In other words, in the long run, when you can make decisions about exiting the market or not, meaning you can get rid of your machinery and equipment or keep it, in that long run decision, if you're seeing this negative profit, you're going to get out of it. But in the short run, because you're stuck with your fixed costs, your fixed inputs, right? Your lease agreement goes to a certain point. In the short run, even if you're making this negative profit, you're going to continue with this negative profit at that interim, where it's still better than doing zero. You're going to continue with that negative profit because you're looking at your short run decision based on short run changes that you can make. So the part that I want to, and before we get into a long run decision, maybe, if we look at the graph and see what is happening, because there's something else important that I want to point out to you. And especially since it was brought up in the chat about where are we shutting down, if it is at the ATC or at the ABC. So let's look, imagine This is our ATC, average total cost. This is our average variable cost. And we know that it is the short run because, our average variable and our average total costs are different. And I'm deliberate in making it at lower quantities. Average total cost is, the distance is much greater. This is our marginal cost. And although it may not look like it, the marginal cost is hitting the minimum point of our average total cost and the minimum point of our average variable cost. So when we have, let's say, a price equal to when we had the price equal to 120 and our profit was positive, it's almost as if this is what you have. This is your 120. This is your, let's make it come out here. This is your price equal marginal revenue, right? And so we looked for where price is equal to marginal cost or marginal revenue equal marginal cost, and we got that quantity that was equal to, oh, I forgot. 4. We got the quantity that was equal to 4. Then, so in other words, when the price is 120, in the short run, you're supplying a quantity of 4. Then when we had the price equal to $80, right? Then this is a price equal to $80. Let's make it nicer. And when we had a price equal to $80, we went ahead and we supplied 2. And notice, if you look on the graph, your price when it's 120, the price is greater than average variable cost at 120, so we can see that. And when we look at 80, the price is greater than our average variable cost at that point. So when the price is 120, we produce a quantity equal 4. And at the quantity equal 4, if you look on that vertical line at 4, and the quantity equal 4, the price of 120 is greater than the point on your average variable cost that corresponds to quantity equal to 4. Similarly, at 80, when we look at the price equal 80, we produce 2, so we find marginal revenue equal marginal cost. And we can see from at the vertical line at 2, we can see that at the quantity 2, the price is greater than the corresponding average variable cost at 2. And we would continue doing all of this, and based on the rule that I gave, we will continue doing all of this until we get to a price that is less than our average variable cost. So for fun, you can work out when the price is equal to 40. For fun, you can work out what will happen. What is your marginal revenue equal to marginal cost at price equals 40? And you're going to find that at that particular quantity, where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost equal to 40, at that particular quantity, the profit is going to be less than, your profit is going to end up being less than minus 120. Furthermore, I think your quantity may end up being 0 or less than 0. I think it was 0 that it was coming up to be. So maybe if you try 50 so you don't get 0 or something like that. Oh no, we were supposed to try 70. Don't try 60, so try 70. Right? You're going to get that kind of quantity. So what's the point that I'm trying to bring here? So let's highlight that you can actually show that you will produce positive quantities as long as the price is hitting the marginal cost curve above the average variable cost curve. As long as the price is hitting the marginal cost curve above the average variable cost curve, you go ahead and produce that. Quantity. But the minute you start to get to a situation where what? The minute you start to get a situation where your price is equal to marginal cost at a point on the marginal cost below the average variable cost, you're going to produce 0. So in other words, if I look on this portion of my marginal cost curve that is above my average variable cost, that is my firm's short run supply curve. Because the price quantity combination that is along my marginal cost curve here, the price quantity combination will be the price quantity combination the firm is using to supply. So this would be your short run supply. And for quantity equal to 0, it's going to end up being, here, let's do this. That's for any price all the way up to that price. So what did I say at a nutshell? The firm's short-run supply curve is the marginal cost curve above the average variable cost curve. And we can actually find out the quantity and really the price at which your marginal cost is above the average variable cost curve. And I'm going to do that actually. So here's my aside. If I find the quantity at where marginal cost is equal to my average variable cost, then I can use that quantity to determine the price, and this is going to be the price at which the firm will produce a positive level of output. So I can set my marginal cost equal to average variable cost. So if you recall, my cost function is equal to 120 plus 40Q plus 10Q squared. So my marginal cost is equal to, and remember this is marginal cost as a function of quantity, is equal to 40 minus, or plus, 40 plus 20Q, and my average variable cost is equal to 40 plus 10Q. So, as some of you are staring at this and saying, okay, what is she going to say now? That your marginal cost equal to average variable cost, when I set the two equal, we're going to realize that Q is equal to 0, all right? Let me do it properly. So if I set both equal to each other, I'm going to realize I'm going to get a situation that Q is equal to 0. I have 40 plus 20Q is equal to 40 plus 10Q, right? So this implies from this, I'm going to get Q is equal to 0. So at Q greater than 0, my marginal cost is greater than my average variable cost. And at Q less than 0, which we know technically you don't produce a negative quantity, at Q less than 0, then my marginal cost is less than my average variable cost. So then I can conclude that the firm's short-run cost curve, or short-run supply, I should say, the firm's short-run supply is equal to, right? So it is, in this case, you want to realize that you're writing your supply P as a function of quantity, right? Your supply curve, if you remember, we used to, back in chapter 2, we could write the supply equation as Q is equal to some function of P, or we can write it as P equal to some function of Q. So our supply, our short-run supply here is going to be equal to your marginal cost, which is equal to 40 plus 20Q for all Q greater than or equal to 0, right? So this is the firm's short-run supply curve. So it is 40 plus 20Q for all Q greater than or equal to 0. And by the way, if I wanted to rewrite this in terms of quantity, it's almost as if I'm saying, this is a doublet side, if you will. It's almost as if I'm saying Q is equal to -2, right? It's equal to -2 plus price over 20. That would be your short-run supply. Any questions? Any questions? And so in reality, if I were to look on the graph of this, I mean, even though I had that general, in reality, if I were to look on the graph of this, this is my marginal cost, which is equal to my supply. Right? Or supply equals marginal cost, however you want to look at it. And then to find what would have to be my quantity, or my price, then here I know my price is equal to 40. And so this is how we get the firm's short-run supply curve. By the way, notice, if I say this really quickly, that then we can get our market supply or market supply in the short run is the sum of all our individual firms' short-run supply curve. So you're going to sum the quantities. And how do we get this? You're summing your quantities at each price. Right? So in my example, if I have, so for my example, notice here, I'm saying that, let me scroll up so that you can see. Notice here, I'm saying that the firm's short run supply, I have QS is equal to -2 plus P over 20. But what let's say I have, so the short run is QS is equal to -2 plus over 20. This is for one firm. And let's say I have N amount of firms. So let's say that there's 100 firms and they're identical firms. So they all have the same, they're identical cost firms. So they all have the same cost function. So they all have the same individual supply curve. Then the market supply would be the sum of, it would be the sum of all 100 of this, which is basically 100 times this. So in a nutshell, what am I saying? So I said 100. So let's look at it. I'm saying, for example, we said that our short run firm supply is equal to, or is written as P is equal to 40 minus, or 40 plus 20Q, right? So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking from here, this is where I have short run supply, 40 plus 20Q, and to realize that essentially what I'm saying here is that this is saying P is equal to 40 plus 20Q. That's what this is saying right here, right? So because your supply curve is showing you combination, price quantity combinations that the firm is willing to supply and receive that particular price. So the firm short run is equal to, P is equal to 40 plus 20Q. But since to find the market supply, we have to sum individual quantities, we have to rewrite this at, in terms of quantity. What is the market supply curve if there are 100 identical firms with the same cost structure? Now, on a pause, we say here, and this is just for ease of calculation, we're saying here that the firms have identical cost structure because then it allows us to say, if I find the marginal cost for one firm, or if I find that cost equation for one firm, the one that said cost is equal to 120 plus 40Q plus 10Q squared. Remember that from all the way up. If I find that one cost structure for one firm, then I can easily say all 100 firms have the same cost structure. And it allows me to say that if the market price is 120, all the firms are setting 120 equal to the same marginal cost. They're going to produce the same quantity, and that allows me to then find the market quantity very easily just by doing a multiplication. If they did not have identical cost structure, then I would have to figure out the cost structure for each, and I would have to be summing all these cost structures, these individual cost structures. So by me saying that they have identical cost structure, it just allows for ease of computation, right? And also you want to imagine that in a competitive market structure on the side, I mean, even if it is not identical down to the last dotted I, you want to make sure that you're having a situation where what? The firms are producing the same product, and if they're competing with each other in such a way that no one can influence the price, they're producing the same product, then they're going to end up using the same inputs to produce the same quantity. Here's my point. Imagine a world where somehow you have a different technique of using your labor and your capital to produce that same level of output that allows you to do this at a smaller or at a lower cost. Then that technology that's available to you in this market structure should also be available to me. So the idea that you could try to do things a little bit different or be able to produce and get your quantity a little bit different, that idea, we don't want to dwell and get into too far about it, because just based on how we are setting up our model, it should be that these firms are exposed and have access to the same technology and the same inputs to produce their level of output. So really quickly, so if this is a firm's supply, we have 100 firms in this market, and we're trying to find the market supply. So we're summing quantities at each price. So I have to rewrite the firm's short-run supply curve in terms of quantity. So rewriting So if I rewrite the firm's short run supply, then I'm going to, so that's where I got, Q is equal to -2 plus P over 20. So since there are 100 firms, since there are 100 market supply, then you can find the market supply as QS is equal to N times QS, where N is equal to 100, the number of firms. So my QS is equal to 100 times little qs. My QS is equal to 100 times -2 plus P over 20. My QS is equal to minus 200 plus 5P. And this would be the short run market supply. Okay, so this is a fantastic spot to take our break. Let's take our break, and when we come back, we're going to jump in headfirst into the long run. But now, what your takeaway from here, when you're saying to yourself, okay, what did we just cover? The takeaway from here is that we now know how to find our market supply. And as I mentioned here, what I want you to realize is that if you're having firms with different cost structure, then you're going to have a situation where when you're summing up all these different cost structure. And so that's just like a little bit of that. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about profit in the long run. So let's say, for example, that we're told the following. We're seeing that given. Wait a minute. Okay, so we're going to look at another example. And in this example, you're being told that this is the firm's competitive, so let's call this example. And I have the firm's short run cost curve, or just say consider the firm's cost curve. C of Q is equal to 100Q minus 4Q squared plus 0.2 Q cubed plus 450. The firm operates in a where the price is equal to, or the current market price is equal to, equal to 150. How much should the firm produce? And if we want to find how much the firm should supply, then in this case, we're going to find where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So your marginal revenue is equal to the price, which is equal to 115. And your marginal cost is equal to the derivative of your cost function with respect to quantity, which is equal to 100 minus 2q plus 0.4q squared. So it's 100 minus 2q plus 0.4q squared. Let's look and make sure. So 100 minus 8q plus 3 times 0.2, 0.6 squared. Let me see. I have a couple of chats, so that means a couple of you exactly. Just want, this was just all me checking to see if you guys were back paying attention, or whether you're still eating lunch. And it is great to know that you're back and paying attention and not eating lunch. Why we're doing this. So you're going to set your marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So you're going to set 150 equal to, exactly. It sounds pretty painful having it glued. I don't want to get in trouble. You need to use some nail polish remover and unglue it. And just remember, we're in the era of social distancing, right? So you don't want to have your eyes touching your computer screen. Rather, maintain a safe distance. But yeah. So you're setting your marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. Thank you. I'm glad it's worth it though. Marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So your marginal revenue is 115, and you're going to set that equal to your marginal cost of 100 minus 8q plus 0.6q squared. So there's a reason why I'm doing all of this, because if you notice that if we work it out, if we take everything over to the or we take everything over to this side, notice that you end up with 0.6q squared minus 8q minus 15 is equal to 0. So that's the reason why I wanted to go through this example, because in this case, you're going to have to use the quadratic formula. And so you would say using q is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. You want to use that quadratic formula to find your values of q. Right? Or you could use what Gamby has, what is being said in the chat. You could see and try both methods and see which, if they both work for you. But just to remind you, your A is whatever number you have on the q squared. Your B is whatever number you have on the q, and your C is whatever number you have without a q. So you want to make sure that you check in those. Somebody worked it out really quick, and I absolutely appreciate that. And you are correct. So when you work it out, you should get q is equal to, so you should get a q1 value that is equal to minus 1.67, and you should get another q value that is equal to 15. And so when you get this case, it means that at p equal to 115, your q is equal to 15. Now I skipped ahead and I went all the way in finding q is equal to 15, and I just accepted it. There's a couple points that I want to say here. If we knew what the firm supply curve is, we would realize that the point 15, 115 is on the firm short run supply curve. So we could find the firm short run supply curve and satisfy our mind with this situation. Excuse me. So if you remember just now, we find that our marginal cost, if we look back, our marginal cost is equal to 100 minus 8q plus 0.6q squared. So 100 minus 8q plus 0.6q squared. That was our marginal cost. And if we find our average variable cost, if we look at our cost function, our average variable cost is going to consider only the first 3 entries. So it's going to be 100 minus 4q plus 0.2q squared. So 100 minus 4q plus 0.2q squared. So MC is equal to our average variable cost. It's going to be 100 minus 8q plus 0.6q squared is equal to 100 minus 4q plus 0.2 squared. And so if you put all of it together, you're going to realize that you're going to get, if I put this point, I'd have 0.4q squared is equal to 4q, which implies that here my q is equal to 0. So the firm's short run supply is going to be exactly what somebody's telling me. P is equal to 100 minus 8q plus 0.6q squared for all q's. Right? So the firm's short run and in practice, we're actually saying P is equal to 100 minus 8q plus 0.6q squared for q greater than 0. Did I do something wrong? Yes, I totally did. Q is equal to 10. Right, so if you look at this, I'm going to end up having 0.4q is equal to 4. And so I will have q is equal to 10. So since I know this is true for my short-run supply curve, that for any quantity greater than 10, the firm will supply it. And I can also figure out at Q equal 10, I can figure out that the price is equal to 100 minus 8 times 10 plus 0.6 times 10 squared. And you'd work this out and you'll find that that price is equal to, somebody's telling me, 80. So that price is equal to 80. Thank you so much for telling me. So that price is equal to 80. So what we're saying here is that the firm will supply, I mean, if I want to write it all fancy, I would say that the firm supplies a quantity, whatever the price is for the supply curve, that it's going to be 0 whenever the price is less than $80. And then it is 100 minus 8Q plus 0.6Q for all squared, for all price that is greater than or equal to 80. So this is when the firm is going to use the supply curve, the marginal cost, whenever the price is greater than or equal to 80. So if we had found this initially, then when we calculate here with our price being equal to 115, we would then know that the firm will supply a positive quantity because price is equal to 115. Okay, so real quick, what do we do then when it comes to the long run profit maximization? So for our long run profit maximization, it is very similar to what the firm does in the short run, meaning the firm is going to find Q star where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. But the second step is that now, because all our inputs are variable, the firm is going to say, you know what, at that Q star, am I making a positive profit? At that Q star is price greater than or less than my average total cost, average cost, because there's no fixed cost. So it's similar to what we have been doing all along. It's just that now, in the long run, there's no need for you to accept and continue producing if you're getting a negative profit. So you're going to find your Q star where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, and then 2, you're going to produce Q star if your price is greater than or equal to average total cost, which is the same as your average cost. You produce 0 if your price is less than average total cost. And producing 0, I want you guys to realize that here we're saying that you exit, right? So you exit the market if the price is less than your average total cost. The idea is, in the long run, you can vary your inputs, all of them. So it makes no sense for you to stay producing and getting that negative profit in that kind of situation. I also want you guys to realize that in this case, your profit is less than 0. So your profit is less than 0, so you're not going to want to entertain it. Also, I want you to realize on the other side, when price is equal to average total cost, your profit is equal to 0. And remember that we're talking about economic profit. So if you're in, you're going to stay. Getting a 0 economic profit is okay, because that means you're getting a positive business profit, and it's large enough to cover your implicit costs. But if so you're going to stay. If you're outside and you've seen a 0 economic profit, you're also going to enter, because this is also a good thing. So you either enter, I should say, if you're outside, you're outside. If you're inside, you're inside. You're indifferent as equal, basically. But if you're getting a positive profit, you're going to enter the market and you're going to stay. If you're getting a negative profit, you're going to exit the market or don't come in. So I should say right here that this is enter or stay. Okay. So now, to get into a little bit more meat of the matter, the thing is, what happens when we're transitioning from the short run to the long run? And it has implications on what can we say about the long run market supply. So if you notice that with the short run market supply, we say that the short run market supply, it comes from summing all that short run supply curve for the firm, and we're summing all of that to get to the market supply curve, and we have it upward sloping. So back to here, all the way up. I don't want to scroll up and mess up, but remember that when we found that market supply, that market supply is representative of our the sum of our short run supply curve. I'm making this point because I want you guys to realize that it is upward sloping. Now we're going to talk about a long run supply curve, and just for simplicity, making our life easier, we're going to assume that there is it's a constant cost industry. You don't have increasing returns, it's constant returns, and so our long run supply curve is going to be horizontal. How do we get to that long run supply curve? Well, we have to find the price for the firm that would be the price where the firm is making his long run and his short run, his long run decision of whether to enter or to stay. So if you go back and you think back to the graph, maybe let me scroll and see if we can find that graph that we had rather than drawing it again. Here's our graph. So if we go back to our graph, remember that here I found where price is equal to average variable cost, and then I said your marginal cost curve that is above your average variable cost, that was given us for short run. That was given us our short run supply curve for the firm, and then I added all of it to get my market supply curve. So what I'm saying here is, well, if this is a firm situation, when the price is equal to average total cost, that is the pivot area, or that is the border on which the firm is making its long run decision. Meaning, if the price is greater than the average total cost, then the firm is going to stay in this market and continue producing the level of output that will maximize its profit. But if the price is less than the average total cost, then the firm is going to exit. So the firm, in making that long run decision, the firm is going to look for exactly where the price is equal to average total cost. And if all our firms are doing exactly that, then what I'm trying to say here is that if we think about of a constant return market, right? So you don't have increasing costs or decreasing costs. Then in the long run, that price at which the firm is making that decision whether to exit or enter, that price is going to be the same, right? Regardless of whether you're producing 5 units, 10 units, or 100 units in total in this market. That's going to be the same price across all firms in the market. You get what I'm saying? Let me say it again slowly. So if I find this price for 100 firms in the market, for each firm, I'm going to find where price is equal to average total cost. So for one firm, I'm going to find where price is equal to average total cost. And I'm going to say that the firm is going to enter the market. If the firm is already in the market, the firm is going to stay in the market if the price is greater than the average total cost, and exit the market if the price is less than the average total cost. So right here, where the price is equal to the minimum, right here, where the price is equal to average total cost, which is the minimum average total cost, that is that firm enter-exit decision price, right? And I'm saying that that is true for this firm. Then if I have 100 firms in the market, it is the same price that is true for all my 100 firms in the market. And the part that I'm adding is that if I even have more firms coming in, this is a constant returns market structure, constant returns to scale. So it's not like increasing costs or decreasing costs, it's constant return. So it doesn't matter if I have 100 firms coming in or some firms leaving. It's going to end up that the cost doesn't change by having more or less firms in the market. That cost structure is not changing because of that. And so that price, where price is equal to average total cost, is going to remain the same. And so I'm saying that at that price, it doesn't matter whether the market is supplying 100 units, 1,000 units, 10,000 units, that is going to be the price at which the firm is making that long-run decision. So we can find that. So I really went back to this curve, this graph, because I want you to realize that even though it is your short-run, you're looking at this cost structure and you're like, oh yeah, but you have fixed costs in it, but you're finding that price that is equal to average total cost, that you're going to say, okay, this is my firm's long-run price decision situation. Okay. So as we scroll down, so you can find the firm's long-run price. Finding the price where marginal revenue is equal to the average total cost gives us the firm's long-run decision price. Basically, you know what? Let me just say it this way. Actually, if I say finding the price where price is equal to average total cost, I'll come back with a marginal. Don't worry. So I'm saying find the price where price is equal to average total cost gives the firm's long-run decision. Yes. To answer that question, yes. So the long run price is always higher. Is either greater than or equal to our short run price. Okay. Okay. So to get what I'm trying to say here. So if you want to find where your price is equal to average total cost, because if price is equal to average total cost at that point, it means total revenue is equal to total cost, and then it means that the firm is earning zero economic profit. And when the firm is earning that zero economic profit, that is a long run decision. In the long run, he's either going to enter or exit. How did I do this? Okay, so I have to scroll a little bit, and I want to scroll slowly so I don't mess up what we have here. Okay, so you're finding. Okay, here it is. So you're finding the price where price is equal to average total cost. This gives us the firm's long-run price decision. Because where or at Q where price is equal to average total cost, profit is equal to zero. In other words, so this is that firm's long-run decision. So if I use this, so for example, if I have this cost function here, and this one is a little bit messy because notice we're going to get it into, if I find average total cost, notice I'm going to get it, it's going to start getting messy because of the nature of the cost function. It's going to get messy I mean, you could find your average total cost by dividing this by Q, and then you're going to set your price equal to this average total cost. But let's use, for example, just to make our life nice and easy, let's go back to this cost function that we had from before. So let's use, where's my cost function? And hopefully this is better. Well, no, it's no better. I have a cost function that is equal to 120 plus 40Q plus 10Q. Let's try that. So we have 120 plus 40Q plus 10Q squared. So here, consider the cost function. then we can find, if we have the following cost function, we can find our average total cost is equal to 120 over Q plus 40 plus 10 over Q, or 10Q. So that's a big question. What price would price minus average total cost equal to 0? Where are we going to find the situation where price minus average total cost is equal to 0? Oh, somebody's telling me. Hold up. Right, so we're going to set price equal to average total cost, but we don't know what is the price that we're setting equal to average total cost, right? So we could be saying we want to find where average revenue is equal to average total cost. But here's the thing, if we look back at our function, at that point where we're saying our price is equal to average total cost in the long run, then realize that at that point, we're trying to find where price or marginal revenue is equal to our average total cost is occurring at that minimum average total cost. Then you want to find in other words, if you look at that graph, so I don't have to scroll up, this is my average total cost. This is my marginal cost. Let's forget ABC for a second. So, I mean, I keep on talking at what price, and you got to remember, even though I'm saying price, it's price equal marginal revenue. So the firm is always looking for that marginal revenue equal marginal cost. So where am I going to find the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost for them to consider producing or being in that market, but also equal to average total cost? If I'm at this point here, marginal revenue can be equal to marginal cost, but it's not equal to average total cost. As it turns out, all three are equal right here. So basically, you're trying to find where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost and also equal to average total cost. So let me say it again in a nutshell. So you are looking for where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, always for that firm to do that profit maximizing decision. And what I'm saying here is that, okay, I'm finding marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. And remember, I'm in the long run, and I'm looking at where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Above here, marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, and I'm making a positive profit. So I'm going to go ahead and produce, because if I find marginal revenue equal to marginal cost here, right? So this is, let's say, for example, at this price. So here, at this price, marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Okay, let's just say this is our P0. So at P0, marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, but or marginal revenue or marginal cost or price is greater than average total cost, right? So we know that it's not at that situation. If we're here at P2, or let's say P1, if we're here at P1, this is marginal revenue, this is marginal revenue. If we're here at P1, notice that P1 what? P1 is less than my average total cost at that quantity, but it may also be, I'm getting negative profit. So below I'm getting negative profit, above I'm getting positive profit. Where am I getting zero profit, or where am I getting that zero profit where, you know what? Above it, I'll enter, below it, I'll leave. So I have to find where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost equal to average total cost. So here I want to say, at T0, my marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, and my price P0 is greater than my average total cost. So I should say at Q0. So profit is positive. But at Q1, my marginal revenue is also equal to marginal cost, and my price is less than average total cost. So profit is less than 0. So what price? Oh shoot, the quantity at that price. Or the price at that quantity is our long run price. And then I think I have to stop. I didn't even realize the time. The price at that quantity is our long run price. Okay, so I think I have to stop at this point.